It's 2 o'clock on a Friday. You know what that time is. It means it's time for the 2 p.m. project at Interchange with your host, Chris Cabati. Give me a big round of applause. Hey! Oh, wow. Look, we've come to you today live from Interchange headquarters. Not much has changed. We still don't have a studio audience, even though it did sound like we did. We've upgraded a few things. I've had a haircut. What else has happened? We've got some new equipment. We've got cameras everywhere. We've got people online. It's going to be fantastic. It's great to have your company here again today for the 2 p.m. project. Always great to have you here as we explore the big questions of life during this particularly turbulent time. In each of these episodes, we're actually going to be exploring the topics that can equip you with the skills and the resources and the mindset required to thrive and flourish during this particularly challenging time. You know what I'm talking about. Today on the show, we're going to continue on the well-being long and winding road that we're on. We're still looking at the PERMA model, but we're looking at a slightly different part. Yes, that's right. I love you, I hate you. The 2 p.m. project looks at relationships. Okay. The sound effects broke our budget this week. That's it. That's all we have. That's our introduction. The house band is a better band, thank God. Christian and Zanny are standing by at the end of the show. Thank God for that. It's great to have your company here again today. Chris Cabati is my name, broadcasting from Interchange headquarters, where we have no one in the room except myself and 5 metres or so over there. My producer, double leopard, Emma Grace. Great to have your company. Who would have thought, actually, that we have a new measurement, which is trolley distance now. Emma's about 3 shopping cart trolleys away from me. That's just the way we roll here. We keep it safe. In this episode, we're going to continue on focusing on well-being, on the PERMA model that we looked at last week. Last week, if you were tuning in, we looked at the P. Look at that, hey? I told you we didn't have a budget. We looked at P, which, if you remember, stood for positive emotion this week. Hey, magic trick, you ready? Watch carefully. We're looking at relationships this week, hey? How about that? Relationships this week on the 2 p.m. project. We have our special guests, as always, our particular clever crew, Interchange colleagues. Melissa Giles is here, Dr. Melissa Giles. Hello, Melissa. Welcome back. Can we hear you? You'll need to unmute your microphone, I think. Melissa, are you there?
Yes, I know. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm very well. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for not quitting during the week and coming back to the 2 p.m. project. Also joining us, Managing Director and Founder, Gabrielle Harris. Hello, Gabe.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday.
Oh, happy Friday. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much, and welcome to all our audience watching. We are streaming live via YouTube. Please don't forget, it is an interactive show. We're streaming live, so if you want to ask us a question over there on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, depending on your browser, we have a place where you can actually ask questions, and they will come through to us through the magic of technology, and we will ask the panelists as we go. So Gabe and Melissa, we're going to go to in a second. We also have Matt Harris and 3 beautiful boys who are going to talk to us about their experience in isolation. And as I said before, Christian and Zanny are going to have a chat to us about being a couple in this crazy time and how quarantine is working for them, as well as play us some of their music. So sit tight for the next hour. Melissa Giles, if I can bring you back, can we have a quick chat to you? Last week we looked at the PERMA model. Do you want to give us a quick recap of that and what we're going to be dealing with today as we move into relationships?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Chris. So, yeah, we talked about PERMA in our 2 p.m. project episode 1 last week. And PERMA is an acronym that stands for 6 core elements of well-being. So the P is for positive emotion, as Chris was saying, E for engagement, R for relationships, M for meaning, A for accomplishment, and H for health. So today we are talking about relationships, and this is an evidence-based model of well-being. So we know that if we focus on those aspects of our well-being, if we take steps to improve those areas in our life, it is actually going to make a difference in terms of our well-being. So as you would all know from your experiences of living, relationships are core to our well-being. It's fundamental to feel those connections, to have people in our lives. As humans, we are wired to be social beings. So from an evolutionary point of view, from a survival point of view, we've always done better when we're in a collective. So we know that meaningful connections are incredibly important for our well-being. And that's what we're focusing on in this episode today.
So, I mean, we know obviously that humans have evolved with a drive to share life with a partner, maybe just not 24 hours a day like we're doing. I mean, I think, back to the farmers of this world, they all got up together, they had breakfast together, and then they went off and did their separate jobs. The people who roamed across the savannah probably did the same thing. They went off for periods, and now we're all stuck together. How is COVID-19 impacting our relationships?
Yeah, as you say, Chris, it's quite an unusual situation at the moment in terms of all of us being in our homes. And I guess one of the impacts of COVID-19 is certainly that our closest relationships are going through a very different phase in terms of that level of time spent together. But also equally, those that we're living with, we're spending more time with, but those that we're not living with, we're not getting to see face to face. So I think it's an interesting dynamic in terms of potentially couples that, or intimate couples that don't live together, potentially now are having long distance relationships, even if they were to live in the same suburbs. So we certainly know that COVID-19 is having a huge impact on our relationships. Either we're spending more time together or we're spending less time together.
Well, it seems to be, I mean, I've done a bit of research this week. I'm not sure that you could publish it, given that there were probably 3 people that I spoke to. However, have it your own way. If you don't want to publish it, it's still an interesting thought. I have a feeling that relationships are going both ends of the spectrum. People are either getting closer or they're actually getting further away as a result. I mean, we're not used to being around each other all day, every day. What are some of the potential risks for relationships connected to COVID-19 and this challenging time?
Yeah, so I think that the social distancing, coupled with spending the majority of our time at home, really increases social isolation and the risk of loneliness. That's one of the outcomes of COVID-19 is in terms of people being more socially isolated, which can lead to that sense of loneliness in terms of feeling alone, feeling disconnected, not feeling like we have people in our lives. And we know that loneliness is an issue for our community already before COVID-19. So there's some really interesting research that was done back in 2018 by the Australian Psychological Society in partnership with Swinburne University, and they asked a representative sample of adults in Australia about loneliness and found that 1 in 4 adults reported feeling lonely. So we know that already our community can feel a sense of disconnection, and COVID-19 is, I guess, exacerbating that sense of loneliness. We also know that lonely people suffer in terms of their poorer mental health and physical outcomes. So, there are some risks of the situation that we're in at the moment in terms of those impacts on our relationships and how we feel within ourselves.
So, Melissa, the research has shown us that self-isolation can really hit 3 critical components of mental health you were just speaking about before. So, firstly, it's our sense of autonomy, it's relatedness, so it's a sense of being connected to others, and competency, so actually feeling effective. What are some of the strategies that people could consider to avoid feeling lonely during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most important thing to remember is that social distancing does not mean that we're socially disconnected from other people. So it's really important to think about in your day, how do you connect with those people, both the people you live with, who, as we've said, we're spending a lot more time with, but also those people that we're not living with, that, you know, we're not able to see physically. So obviously our face-to-face contact with other people has been reduced, but it's really important to think about how we connect with others. And we know that in terms of reducing loneliness, in terms of fostering that sense of connection to others, it is best to use video-based tools such as FaceTime or Zoom or Teams, whatever it might be for you and your friends and colleagues. But it actually is more effective to see each other than it is to, say, send a text or an email or even make a phone call. So if you're wanting to reach out to people, as I said, it's a very innate need of ours to connect with other people. So think about using video, because that is much more effective. We actually feel a stronger connection to someone if we can see their face and read their emotional expressions, their facial expressions, and understand what's happening for them. So one of the strategies that we can definitely do is use the technology we have available to us to make sure we're building and maintaining those connections to people in our life.
Absolutely. So relatedness, particularly important during this time. Thankfully, we live in an era where technology like this can connect us. I mean, despite the fact that we're all in separate places, everyone in their own homes, we still have an opportunity to speak and to see each other. If I can get a little personal right now.
Yeah.
I know you're the expert. I know you got all the answers for me, and I'm learning a great deal. I'm interested in you. What are you doing personally? Like, how is it impacting on your relationships, and what strategies have you been putting in place to deal with what's going on?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, well, it's an interesting, my situation is married and have two young kids. They're 3 and 5. So we are staying home as much as we possibly can, which means we're spending a lot of time together. So it's fair to say there's moments where it's quite intense. My husband and I both work full time. So, we're juggling work, juggling the children. So some of the things that we're doing in terms of strategies, we have a family meeting in the morning where we talk about kind of what we need to get done that day. In terms of my husband and I, we have really only one room that is a quiet space. So we have to juggle our time in that meeting room, our new designated meeting room. So, we're just having a good conversation. I guess communication is always key to relationships. So making sure everyone's talking about what they need to get done in the day, what's important to them. We talk to the boys about what they like, what would like to do in that day within the limits of what we're permitted to do. So, yeah, I guess for us, it's been really about communication. But there's definitely some moments where you think, wow, this is quite intense. I also have parents who I guess are elderly. They're 80. So we've been FaceTiming them every day. With the boys being so young, it's really the matter of 5 minutes is the most that the children can really manage. But we've taught them how to use FaceTime. They've never used it before. So it's also thinking about those people in our extended network and family that may not know how to use this technology, teaching them how to do it. So the boys can pop the iPad next to them while they're doing Lego and have a quick chat to Nana and Papa. So that's been a really big thing for us as well in terms of staying connected to my parents and the boys' grandparents.
These are all the tips and tricks that we're learning here on the 2PM project. It's a wealth of information coming out free to you, streaming via YouTube. Thank you, Dr. Melissa Giles. We'll come back to you in a second. Gabrielle Harris, founder and managing director of Interchange, if I can bring you in. Now, there is absolutely no rule book for this current time. Every day is a great challenge for us. It's bringing stress and new challenges all the time. It can be actually really traumatic for some people. Are there actually any upsides for what we're dealing with at the moment connected to relationships?
Thanks, Chris. I think that there will be, but I don't think it will be something that comes naturally to us. We're going to need to really work on it and to put effort and time into our relationships. One of the pieces of research that I love the most and often refer back to is that of Dr. John Gottman. And I really like his work because of how it came to be. So about 35 years ago, he and his best mate, Bob Levison, got together to talk about their succession of failed relationships with women and why it was that they just kept falling over and how they could never seem to have to maintain long-lasting, sustainable, flourishing relationships. So he's not, this kind of self-appointed guru that you'd see on daytime TV. Their hypothesis started from nothing, really. If you like, it came from this place of, we really have no basis to research this, but we need to research it in order to learn it, in order to have a relationship. So it's with that kind of concept that they approached it. And I guess if you think about that, it's with such an open lens and a growth mindset to not being attached to your research.
Yeah. And supreme failure as well. I love that. Yeah. We'll just create a model out of our divorces.
It's really cool. But in that I guess colossal ignorance that they talk about, back in the 70s, they started this research whereby at the end of a day, after couples were apart for about 8 hours, he would sit them down and monitor how they debriefed their day. And so they checked things like, their heart rate and their sweat responses and a thing that I think they called the jiggleometer, like how much you bounced around in the chair when you're talking to.
They're exercise devices. I've seen them advertised.
and they measured all of these things to try and work out which relationships would fail. So their thinking was coming from the deficit, like how can I predict or not predict how successful a relationship could possibly be. And then they took that to the next level. So they built like kind of like a B&B, and they put cameras all around the place, and they just left the couple there under surveillance and checked over the course of a weekend their facial expressions, and they checked their stress hormones in their urine and a whole series of other things in response to the conversations that they were having with each other. Anyway, that's I really like the background story because it's fascinating as to how then they came to exploring how to help couples and to try and put some theory to which couples would be successful and which couples would, or which relationships ultimately would fail. And he actually then, John actually then got married and did sustain a long relationship with his partner, Julie, who's also a professor. And his partner, Julie, wanted to use this information to support people to have successful, long-lasting, flourishing relationships. And not only did they start to look at that from a intimate perspective, but also from a family perspective and then into business relationships. And that's the part that I find truly fascinating, to move it from deficit to, I guess, a positive outlook, and to think about the theory that supports that. So he and Julie came up with 9 key attributes that you could use to measure the success of a relationship. And they've got it down to something like, I think it's a 92% accuracy. If each of these 9 attributes are demonstrated by a couple, you are 92% likely to remain together. It's so cool.
Okay. Please, what are they? I think everyone's hanging off every word you say. Please, Gabrielle, what is it?
Okay, so I'm going to give you my dumbed down version of them, but okay. It applies to intimate relationships, it applies to family relationships, and it applies to business relationships. So here they go. Okay. The first one is what they call building a love map. And that is to understand as much as you possibly can about the psychological world of the other person. What is it that inspires them? What is it that motivates them? What's their background, their history, their previous experience with relationships or in a peer-to-peer business setting? their background in terms of their career, but build a map with as much information as you can about the other and use that map to reconnect in with them regularly. So that's the first one. The second one is to share fondness with each other. And that's so straightforward and basic, but sometimes we just forget to just the little things around, you know, the hug or the touch, which now we can't do, so we need to find other ways. But what is that affection that you can just give to people? Here's one that I think about a lot, which is the turn towards somebody rather than away from. And this comes up a lot in conflict. So do we actually go to somebody when we're feeling like we want a separation, or do we actually turn towards them and try and find solutions together? The positive perspective, that's all our mindset. So that's the fourth attribute that John and Julie talked to. Effective conflict engagement. So I talked a bit about that when I was talking about the turn towards or away from. But conflict is actually and can be a really healthy part of relationships. Sometimes we like to think that relationships without conflict are the ones that are flourishing, and all the evidence around relationships says that conflict is actually an incredibly important part of a strong relationship. It's how we hear somebody's point of view and understand what part, even if it's only a small part, that we've played in that conflict. Understanding each other's dreams and aspirations and supporting one another in those dreams and aspirations, just as important in a business setting as it is in a marriage situation. Create shared meaning. And the last two are trust and commitment. So how do you demonstrate those two attributes of trust and commitment in all that you do and the way that you engage? So, you know, there's 30 years of research there, and I've really dumbed that down. Oh, I have to dumb it down for myself. But
for me, I thought you were going to say for me. I've had to dumb it down for Chris, and that's okay. I'm all right with that.
I wanted to remember them. I just think it's just really good to think about what's that one thing that attribute is talking to, and how much do we actively think about putting that in place for ourselves, for our partners, for our kids, for our colleagues, to maintain healthy relationships.
It's really interesting and fascinating, because it shouldn't be any different, your relationships that you have with your partner, your children, or in a business sense. It's actually fascinating that it can be applied that way as well. I need to ask you, Gabe, I need to get personal with you as well, as I did with Melissa, around how is this impacting you personally, your own relationships? What strategies have you put in place? It's all very well to be the expert, give us the research. I'd say this to Dr. Phil if he were here. It's the same thing to you. How do you apply it personally?
Well, if I have to get personal, Chris, then I'll just have to get personal with you. From a relationship perspective, in terms of a work setting, we're a pretty intimate team, and there's a lot of connection that we have, and you know, I'll use both yourself and Melissa in this scenario. I'm finding it quite hard to be physically isolated from the team that we work with every day. We spend typically 8-9 hours together 4 or 5 days a week, and without that visual and physical connection of all of us being in the same space, some of this stuff is kind of harder to do. You have to be really deliberate about making time to talk about history and backgrounds and how that applies to what we're doing. You have to be super deliberate about showing fondness and admiration for what each other are doing. And I feel a little bit of that is missing right now, because you don't just have those moments in the kitchen making a cup of tea, or laugh about something ridiculous that's just happened. You know, it's difficult to have those little building blocks that we've always had before. So I'm finding it hard.
Melissa Giles, I might bring you in as well. We can join the conversation. You know, you started off talking about isolation and as an individual, loneliness with, as an individual, how you're coping your relationship kind of with yourself. What about colleague, like what Gabe's been speaking about? We've been used to working as a team and now we're all at home. We haven't seen each other face to face for a number of weeks now. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting for our team as we've adjusted to this new working situation. So we are a very social bunch, and what we've done is we have scheduled a regular check-in in the mornings, and it's actually, we've put it as a tea break. So that has been really important for us in terms of keeping up that connection. And we don't talk work, we talk about what's going on for us as individuals. So I think we need to remember sometimes as well that, you know, when we're in the office, those work relationships, it's not completely work entirely. So, you know, we and obviously at the moment, so much is going on in our lives. So it's really important that we maintain those connections and have those conversations. So, yeah, for our team, one of the things that we've done is, a morning tea break. We're also having Friday night drinks. We have a dress-up theme tonight. So I'm quite looking forward to that as well.
Got your cosy already?
I certainly do.
Gabe, any final thoughts on this? Like, as a business owner, connection. We spoke about this last week when we were tackling positive emotion. As a business owner, I think the game changes because you're not just responsible for yourself. Not that you're responsible. We're all adults. Let's you know, let's be serious about this. But in terms of team connection, this does fall on your shoulders to keep us all on the same path, all navigating this crazy rocky road that we're on, so that we can come out the other side and be as strong a team as we ever have been to tackle whatever state the world is when we come out that other side. How do you do it?
Yeah. Look, I don't know if I'm doing the world's best job of it, because what I'm finding is it's making, in order to do it, the hours that we would have spent typically need to be extended. So to have those one-on-one connections with people and bring a shared sense of meaning and make sure that we maintain trust and have that positive perspective, it's a lot of individual phone calls that you need to make to just keep everybody feeling connected and feeling supported. So whilst in a environment where all of you are collectively there, that's really simple to do with a look across the room and a smile and a how you going. That can be done in 3 minutes, whereas now, in order to pick up the phone and have a check-in around how's everything for you right now, that's 45 minutes, and it takes time. And so it hits you somewhere. It's either going to be in things that you haven't managed to get done in the day, or it's going to be in not giving your family the attention that they're looking for. So this period is tricky, but it's tricky for everybody. And we can't forget the importance of connection and making sure you do pick up the phone and have those conversations each day. But I don't know, perhaps not being so hard on yourself around what you can and can't achieve, and to remain authentic in what you're feeling as well. So I spent a good 2 weeks trying to be Pollyanna, and then at some point I kind of had to say, well, this is really hard. I'm looking forward to when we can all go back to the office and get back on the road. And as much as I never thought I'd say it, take me to the airport and put me on another aeroplane.
Holy smoke, how times have changed. You think you know a girl. I didn't think I'd ever hear you say that, Gabe. Well done. Thank you, Gabrielle Harris, Melissa Giles. We'll come back to you in a second. I'm going to bring in Matt Harris. So, you know, this is not just about business relationships as we navigate this difficult time. We wanted to bring in a slightly different perspective. We got Matt Harris, his 3 beautiful boys there, Leo, Ali and Julian, on the trampoline, trying to get some exercise in this crucial time. We're in a unique situation, Matt. If I can start with you, just to give our viewers a bit of context. Matt looks after the boys. That's his job, but he also has another job, which is a job. So tackling all of this in this time while everyone is at home is a great challenge. I'm interested in honesty from everyone. I hope you feel comfortable about answering this in front of the boys, but I wonder how honest you've been with them in this time. Do you watch the news with them? How have you explained to them what's going on?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's probably changed over time as well. We are fairly honest, I would say. And at the start, they would have had an understanding of what was going on, even kind of back towards when it was starting off in Wuhan after the Christmas holidays. And I think that's when people were beginning to talk about this thing that was happening there. And then gradually over the term time, it kind of became more of a thing. We saw other countries shutting down schools, and there was always this conversation at schools, oh, when do you think it's going to happen here? And they, even if we weren't honest in that conversation with them, they would have picked it up at school anyway, because teachers were talking about it, other kids were talking about it. They could see gradually that other kids weren't coming into school. So we thought it was important to be completely honest, really. As far as watching news, it's not that it does or doesn't happen. Sometimes it does. I think even it's got to the extent now where I even find it a bit of an overload to be watching the news every day, because you just need a break from it sometimes as well. So they've been aware of it across the whole time.
It feels like it's getting harder and harder, isn't it? I mean, given you've got your hands full with 3 boys and your own work, what are the ways you're considering your own well-being at this time? Do you have to find your own private space? How are you doing it, Matt?
I'm not sure I am considering it yet. It's in the back of my mind. It's interesting because a lot of my work was probably already fairly isolated and at home already, but now I have everyone in that space. So what was my space to work in has now disappeared anyway. So to then try and work, I've given up at the moment. I've gone, it's too hard. It's not possible given our situation.
Yeah, okay.
And also finding space for my wife to work as well.
So this is a pretty unprecedented time in our history, obviously. People have suggested that potentially writing a journal at this time would be really good in terms of a connection between a parent and their kids. Writing a journal, writing it down, writing their thoughts down, partly to put their thoughts down, whether it's actually written or whether it's for younger kids, even drawing pictures of how they're feeling at the moment. On the one hand, it helps them express what they're feeling. On the other hand, they have the opportunity to go back to it in subsequent years to see, almost like a time capsule, to see it's going to be such a defining time for all of them, a bit of a time capsule to see what they were thinking and feeling and experiencing during this time. Is that something you guys have been doing?
Well, we had actually, prior to kind of lockdown, we had started a bit of a video diary of just trying to, it was more for our own amusement, I think, to see, I was kind of put it to the boys as, imagine looking at this in a year's time and going, look what we had to do this time last year, as a Facebook memory or something. So we'd started a video diary, and we did quite a bit before lockdown, and then it got to lockdown, and I don't think we've touched it again since. And I don't know whether that's because we are now stuck in the same place, and each time I go to pull out the camera, I'm boring myself so much with the same view that I can't bear to then video it and then edit it and look at it again. But I think the kids doing some sort of journal, be it words and pictures, is also a great idea too.
Yeah. Leo, I think we've got Leo and Ali there. Guys, can I throw to you? How are you doing at the moment? I don't know whether we got Julie in there. It's just Leo and Ali. How are you guys doing at the moment? And I'm going to label you. You're speaking on behalf of all the kids in Australia. What advice would you give to the kids during this time? How are you guys getting through your days?
A lot of it is spent up on doing things like video games because we're so sort of starved of things to do at the moment because everyone is always busy and but a good positive that has come out of us not having anyone else to play with, like our friends, is that it's bonding us, like me, Julian, and Ali, together a lot more than we were previously, which I think is really good because we used to not do much together at all, and that's completely changed now. And I think that's quite a and that's quite a good positive that's come out of this whole scenario. But
that's fantastic, Leo. Ali, would you agree with that?
yes.
Phew, lucky you didn't say no. So you mentioned the tech, Leo. That's part of your generation. It's not part of my generation, but you guys have grown up with this. This is every aspect of this is connected to you these days. You can pick up an iPad or a computer. You can work it out 50 times faster than anyone of my generation. What are you guys doing connected to tech to stay in touch with your friends and your extended family during this time?
So I recommend there's some really good apps like Zoom and House Party where you can connect. We've been playing a little bit of online Dungeons and Dragons. We've been there's this in-game stuff on House Party. Yeah, it's really fun. You can connect with your friends and family. It's good software.
Yeah, it's been really good being able to connect with everyone, and we've been doing a lot of, quite frequently, probably like every 2 days or something, we've been doing a whole group with all of our friends, and it's been really good to see everyone as well.
Yeah, great. So what do you do on House Party? How does that work?
Well, it's kind of the same as Zoom, but it's like you don't need a link. You can kind of just go on and press join unless someone's locked the room. And there's in-game stuff like trivia cards you can play with everyone, online trivia cards. And there's one where you draw a picture and everyone else has to guess what it was. And then there's another one that I don't know how to explain it. It's called something where you it's one person, there's one card. It's a bit like a game we play called Cards Against Humanity. So there's one card
Okay.
and everyone selects a different card, and then the judge picks which ones, and then the person with the most points at the end of the game gets and then wins.
Okay, wonderful. Well, there we go. There's the hot tip for all the parents out there.
It's an edited version of Cards
Will you
Against
cut this bit out? Okay, Cards Against Humanity. You didn't even hear that. No one heard that. Anyway, this is a great way to pass the time. Thank you, Leo and Ali. That's very good advice at this tough time. Matt, thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I wish you all the best, and thank you for joining us on the 2 p.m. project.
Thank
We'll catch
No
up
problem.
soon. Thank you,
Thanks
fella.
for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, see you guys. Take care. There you go. You always get more than you bargain for on live TV, don't you? So, I think here's Chris's hot tip. The trove of photos. Look at this. I'm going to change cameras. Come on, double leopard, look at you go. You're amazing. The photos and videos of vacations, I found, is something that you actually could do. We have boxes of these photos. We used to take photos and take one click. My mum takes one shot on her iPhone. Just one. We think it's hilarious. Just one. Everyone get together, smile, click, that's it, one. We take millions of photos. We don't print them anymore, but we have lots and lots of photos. So it's an interesting thing. We can, a verb coined by social psychologists, nostalgize? What would that be? Nostalgia? Nostalgize? I don't know, someone can tell me. Basically, you could get out your photos and share it with your partner. Go through your history together of photos. Have a look at your kids when they were little. Spend some time doing that. That's a really great way to spend some time together as a couple. We're going to lead into couple in a minute. We're going to talk to Christian and Zanny. Researchers at University of Southampton in England have shown that it isn't just an exercise of relishing the past. If indulged in the right way, it actually makes us feel more satisfied with the present and more optimistic of the future. The key to it is not to look at a photo of yourself around the Colosseum in Rome and pine for the fact, be upset for the fact that no one's at the Colosseum these days. It's to actually think about your own experience there. It's not to look at the restaurant and the photo of yourself in the restaurant and then be sad about the fact that the restaurant's probably closed. You actually just relive your history in those moments. So that's Chris's hot tip for this week. Chris's hot tip! Have to do my own jingle. Right. Thank you very much, Double Leopard. Chris's hot tip. We're going to move on to Zanny and Christian, two Melbourne musicians who are in a long-term relationship who've joined us today. It's so great to have you guys here. Before COVID-19, Christian performed with the likes of Billy Davis, Jessica Malboy and Thando, as well as writing and recording, playing music in his hip-hop funk instrumental band, the CB3. You can follow him on Instagram, Facebook, Bandcamp, and Spotify by searching the CB3. That's C for Charlie, B for Bob, and the number 3. Zanny, before COVID-19, Zanny played violin in the hit musical Come From Away, fantastic musical, and played with Claire Bowditch as well as writing, recording, playing her own pop, her own art pop tunes under her own name, Zanny. That's Xani. You can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, Bandcamp, and Spotify by searching Zanny, Xani. Christian and Zanny, are you there? Come in. Hello.
Hello, we're there.
Hello. This is kind of like Eurovision. Eurovision's been cancelled, but it's so great to have musical acts on this show. We're well aware in this place how horrible this time has been for performing artists. So if you can search out Zanny and Christian, they're going to play at the end of the show. We've got about 20 minutes to go. But what I wanted to do is have a chat to you guys first. You are a couple. You're a long-term couple, both in the performing arts industry. How is life for you guys? I mean, even without the threat of the virus, spending time together is a challenge at any time. What have you guys found particularly challenging as a couple being at home in this time?
Well, actually, to be honest, things are pretty the same as they usually are. Like, we're both musicians, so we both spend a lot of time in the house together fighting over who's going to be practicing where and when. So it's a bit of the business as usual. But yeah, I guess both of us are out of work. So we've both been going through what are we going to do financially, that kind of stress together.
Yeah.
And both trying to support each other while we're both a bit anxious and stressed out about that.
Yeah, okay. So it's a big challenge for us. Some have suggested that a good way to approach this time is really to share your fears openly, whether it be connected to health or financial fears, anxiety. Is this something that you have actively done or have done more of in this time? Is that what you've been doing as a couple?
I think we're pretty open about those sort of things in general. Both being part of the music industry, we both understand where we're both at with finances or with, time management and pressure. Just the whole thing. We talk pretty openly about it. So I don't feel like there's been too much of a change apart from the fact that there's more of a discussion around finances and about the future of our income and industry in general. So I guess we've always communicated pretty well about those things, and we've just flowed on with that.
So this is a particularly tough time for anyone in the creative world. We really feel for performing artists, particularly in this time. No doubt you work off sparks you ride the highs and lows of the world in a creative sense. Sometimes these, times like these can be stimulating. Sometimes they work in the complete opposite way. How creative do you guys feel at this time?
Well, I think like the first kind of because we've been getting calls that gigs are cancelled. Like every week we get more and more calls. Like I've even gotten calls today about gigs cancelling. And so some days you feel really flat and I just don't want to create anything, and I'm just stressed and anxious. And then other days I kind of go the opposite and get really hyper and start making like lots of books with post-it notes about what I'm going to create and how many string quartets I'm going to write this week, and then just kind of fall into a heap of red wine at the end of the day. So
Christian,
Yeah,
what about
and
you?
I think for me, I operate a bit differently. The initial few weeks, the past 2 weeks, I've been kind of enjoying it, to be honest, just spending time in this at our home studio upstairs, and just creating and writing and feeling so free. But I think last night and a bit today, it's kicked in a bit of kind of boredom, and I realised that I've put some stress on myself by expecting that I should be able to use this time to be super productive and come out the other end with, like, you know, all these albums worth of material. And that's kind of a destructive thought process. And just the boredom, I think, is now the cabin fever's kind of kicked in.
It's interesting
Yeah.
because we do have, you know, I know that I often not use the excuse, but I will often say, oh, I'm so busy. The people that we work with, often you say to them, you know, how you going? Their first response is, oh, busy, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so busy. And now that we're not busy, what's everyone doing? And I think it's a really interesting thing. I will often use the excuse, oh, I'm too busy to do those things. Now we're
Yeah.
not as busy. I wonder whether we're taking the opportunity to do it, or whether the impact of what's going on in the world is actually changing the way that the enthusiasm we have to do those, like I was saying, to go and have a look at the photos, go and have a look at your old videos. Stop pretending that you don't have time
Yeah.
to do it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Can you talk yourself out of that? Can you talk yourself out of that feeling?
I think that the constraints that we're under make us think differently. All of a sudden we do have all this time, but it's kind of been forced upon us in around negative circumstances, and it's you can maybe go either way with thinking super positive and going, yeah, I am going to learn another language, or I am going to write an album, or I am going to do this, rearrange the house, whatever. But I think it's also, and in the music industry, there's been a lot of talk about that, you know, oh, I'm going to get all this material written specifically. But I think it's okay to not put that pressure on yourself as well. Danny?
I have always been a bit of a workaholic. I love working, and I am the person that goes, yeah, I'm really busy, and then I just light up about how busy I am. And this has been really hard for me because I don't have anything to do. So I've kind of gone a bit the other direction and tried to get into some advocacy for our industry, trying to interact with our union, thinking that maybe it's a time to do that, and have been doing a lot of meetings every day, and kind of like what Gabe was talking about, how it takes time to have conversations on the phone and Zoom meetings, and at the end of the day it's quite draining. But I think that one thing I would really like to do in this time as a personal growth thing is try to be able to go, it's okay to look through photos, or to do something completely unrelated to this idea of what work is. So lucky I'm going to have a few months to work on that, because I'm not there yet.
Fantastic. Thank you, Zanny. We're going to get to some questions in a minute. I can see the questions starting to come up on the side panel here. Thank you for the people who are watching and submitting the questions. We will get to those in a second. I just wonder for you guys, I know you said that not much has changed for you in terms of how you're interacting as a couple, but I wonder whether the experience of being quarantined has actually caused you to feel alone or more connected. Do you have a thought on that?
To each other, or?
Yeah, to each other as a couple.
I think if we have a conflict, I have felt that more than before, I feel more alone if there's a conflict. Like, whereas before I might go, oh, it's okay, we've had an argument or something, it'll be okay tomorrow, or I can, you know, go and see my sister or something. And now if we've had a conflict, I feel it a lot more, and I go, oh, I'm alone, I'm isolated, I can't go out, and now the person that I'm with, I can't get the support from him because we're in a conflict. I've noticed that maybe, but then like when it doesn't take long to resolve it, we're pretty quick at resolving things. But I guess as well, like I feel very close to Christian, probably a lot more so than when we have the conflict. It feels.
Well, you were talking before, Zanny, around the, you know, the uncertainty and the loss of security during this time, just in the careers that you're in. Do you feel that that's impacting your relationship?
I think it's okay because we're both going through it.
Yeah, we both understand where we're at, where our industry's at, and we both feel, I guess I feel supported because I know she understands and she's the same. So it's not like we're on the same boat, you know, we're traveling it together. So I think we feel kind of pretty connected in that regard.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show. I'm really looking forward to hearing you play. Please stay around if you're tuning in. We've only got about 10 or 15 minutes to go before we finish up on this live feed. You're watching the 2 p.m. project live from Interchange headquarters. Wow, who knew? It's great to have your company here. Thank you to all the people who've been adding some questions in. I'm going to go through them now because I think it's actually time is what I want to say. I think it's actually time. We're going to have a look at some questions here. Got a question for Melissa. We might bring you in first. I'm work from home with my partner and also a housemate. How do I negotiate having certain spaces for video conferences or having alone leisure time without causing conflict?
Great question. Yeah, so I think it all comes down to communication and being really upfront about your needs. So most conflict comes down to miscommunication, you know, not explaining yourself. So as I said, my family, we're sitting down in the morning and talking about what we need, you know, whether that's quiet time to do some work or quiet time to read a book, to do something, you know, as the person said, leisure. We've been doing yoga and exercise classes in our lounge room, so you obviously want some time to be able to do that. So really it all comes down to communication, being open and honest and transparent with what you need.
Okay, fantastic. Matt, might bring you in on this one. Special question. Matt Harris, how has the school managed the situation and communicated with you during this time?
I think to begin with, it was a little bit unclear. And to be fair to them, I don't think they were clear themselves what was happening. So there wasn't a lot of clarity anywhere, really. Over this time, I think they are beginning to set up, because we're obviously in the school holidays at the moment, they're trying to set up processes for next term with the assumption that we won't be there. So they have looked at an app called Seesaw, which I've been trialing with Julian, who's in Foundation. So that consists of the teacher posting various tasks to do. The kids, with obviously at that age with myself or my wife, then go through the task with them and film responses or post responses. It could be a picture or something they've written on a piece of paper, and you can film and annotate. Then that gets posted back onto Seesaw, and the teacher can then come up with comments again from that.
Yeah. Okay. And has the communication been easy? Has it, you know, have you been satisfied with the way that they've been communicating with you?
Yeah, I think I have. I think when they've had information available, that's been passed on. That same app will be, we've got a grade 5 and a grade 6 as well, so they will be using a similar app. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it goes in a couple of weeks when term is supposed to be up and running again.
Yeah, right. Well, it's going to be fascinating for all. I think we're all asking those sort of questions. How long are the children going to be at our house? My God. Okay, question. Christian and Zanny, question for you.
Yep.
Do you find if one of you is feeling flat, it actually affects the mood of the other?
Good question. It can, and I think both of us work pretty hard to be the support when the other one's down and try and keep that in balance. I think.
Yeah, I think it's okay to know that sometimes it's going to be hard. Like, I know if Christian is flat, sometimes there's nothing I can do about it, and he just needs to be flat. He knows I'm here, but like me trying to perk him up and do all this kind of stuff, that kind of makes it worse. So yeah, it can make me flat as well. But I mean, what else are we going to do? We're just all flat, right?
That's right. At least we have music.
Yeah.
At least we have music.
Yeah.
Gabe, final question for you. How can you navigate relationships over the weekend when we're not occupied by work and schoolwork? This person says, I have a family of 5 and I find it difficult to keep everyone motivated and happy. So we are used to a 5-day working period and then 2 days of weekend where we can do different things. At the moment, we've got kind of 7 days of the same.
Yeah, we're finding a bit of that as well. So I can empathise. I'm finding when it gets to the weekend, I have to think of the things that we haven't been doing during the week that could be enjoyable for all of us in a different way. And because of the restrictions that are upon us right now, you've got to be quite creative with that. Sometimes it's as simple as walking, when you do go out for that one walk during the day, like how can you go to a place that you haven't been to before? Jump in the car and maybe drive to somewhere where it's just a park that you've never attended, or it's to cook a special cake, and get the whole family involved in a meal preparation that can last you a whole day. It's to find the things that you don't normally do. But I think just to add to that, I really liked what you were talking about before with the nostalgia. Like, when do you ever go back and look at all of the pictures from holidays that you've been on before and just spend that time connecting? But really, it's just find the break. What's the difference between the weekly grind and the weekend?
Yeah. Look, I love the idea of the nostalgia, and I hadn't quite thought about it. And we used to be very nostalgic. We used to print all our photos and go through them all the time. We don't do that anymore, I think, because of the sheer volume of photos that we take, except for my mother, as I've already told you. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Gabe. We've come to the end of the show. We're about to hear from Zanny and Christian, which is going to be fantastic. They're going to finish the show. But can I just say a big thank you to Dr. Melissa Giles, who's our consulting director at Interchange. Thank you, Melissa. Gabrielle Harris, managing director and founder. Thank you so much for joining us today. Matt Harrison, the 3 beautiful boys, Leo, Ali, and Julian. Just Leo there. Thank you so much for your time. And our special guests today, Christian and Zanny. Let me just read out how you can find their music. Christian, you can follow him on Instagram, Facebook, Bandcamp, and Spotify by searching the CB3, C for Charlie, B for Bob, and the number 3. And Zanny, you can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, Bandcamp, and Spotify by searching Zanny. That's Xani. Please support their music. Please support as much as you can all of the performing artists in this country. Guys, are you there?
We are.
Hello, Copenhagen. This is the only Eurovision that we'll get this year. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell us about the song you're going to play, Christian, and then launch into it, or Zanny?
You can tell a story.
This is a song called Stability that I wrote for Christian.
Wow, couldn't be better. Take it away.
No, my friends want to know about you. They want to know exactly what I see. When I look into your eyes, when you hold me, when we're lying side by side in the night. Stability. Stability is what I want, yeah. Stability is what you've got. You're stable and able to call me on the phone. Oh, baby, gotta tell me when you're coming home. It's not the way that you dress or talk, but the way you take the garbage out. It's not your fame or the flowers you bring, the favorite parties that you cook and clean. Civility is what I want, yeah. Civility is what you got. You're stable and able to call me on the phone. Oh, baby, gotta tell me when you're coming home. Even though you got a happy smile, yeah. And even though you make me laugh out loud, ooh, you won me over with just one move, yeah. WD-40, baby, that was smooth, yeah. Stability is what you got, yeah. Stability is what I want. You're stable and able to call me on the phone. Oh, baby, now tell me when you're coming home. Oh, you're stable and able to call me on the phone to tell me when you're coming home. Do-do-do-do-do-do, yeah, tell me when you're coming home. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, yeah, tell me when you're coming home.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. What an absolute
Thank
delight.
you.
Music just brings joy to us in a time where we absolutely need it. Thank you so much for playing, guys. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks
Thanks,
to all our guests. Chris Gabbardi is my name. I'm the creative director at Interchange. We're here at 2 p.m. every Friday. Please keep joining us. We're building a community as we keep navigating through this crazy world. But it's really great to have you a part of our community as we keep on going. We do customize this show for businesses. If it's something that you think would work for your business, please let us know through interchange.com.au. We can create whatever your needs are in a crazy customized talk show. Just what you need at this time. A bit of fun and something particularly interesting. Thank you to all my guests here today. And we will catch you again next week at 2 p.m. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. See you next week.